Hello and welcome to the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9. I'm Paul Kretschmer. Many people think odometer fraud disappeared with the arrival of digital odometers, but that's completely wrong. In fact, Carfax data suggests roughly 2.1 million vehicles on the road have had their odometer rollback, up 14% since 2021. My guest on today's broadcast is Carfax Editor-in-Chief Patrick Olson.
Okay, I'm with Patrick Olson, the Editor-in-Chief at Carfax, to talk about odometer rollback, which appears to be quite a problem at the moment. How long have you been involved with this work at Carfax then, Patrick?
So I've been working in automotive journalism for almost 20 years now.
Okay, and I used to think of odometer rollback as something that people did mechanically. You know, they got into the instrument cluster somehow and actually physically spun things around. It sounds like it must be so much easier if it's electronic. Could you explain how that works?
Yeah, so it's actually surprisingly much easier now with electronics. So there are devices out there that legitimate mechanics use to fix odometers or install new odometers in the car and set the appropriate mileage. Unfortunately, there are also scammers out there who use these devices, but for just a few $100, they can take 10, 20, 50,000, 100,000 or more miles off of a car.
I understand it's at the state level that there are laws about things like that. So do you mean that scammers actually do that illegally and leave without documentation then?
Right. So I'm not a lawyer, but I can tell you that in most states this would be considered fraud because they are selling you a good whose value is significantly less than what they are telling you it should be worth.
Okay. Odometer readings, do people depend on those for various maintenance details or do mechanics do that too?
Absolutely. So I think what happens for a lot of consumers is there's sort of a twofold thing. One is financial. So a person who buys a car with a tampered odometer loses about $4,000 in value on average. But it's more than just that. So if you buy a car and it has 60,000 miles on it, you might think, I've got 30, 40,000 miles before I need to do some major work, tune-ups and transmission flushes and what have you. In reality, those things may be way overdue and may not have been done at all. And frankly, that's a risk to your car, that's a risk to yourself, and that's a risk to your family.
I bought a used car this past year, and it was over 10 years old. Mm-hmm. Would a car like that be more likely to have its odometer reading rolled back to fool someone that the car is not as hard used as you might expect it to be?
Yep. So I would say the reality right now is that used car prices are running very high. And so even for very old cars, 10 years and older, those cars are still being valued much higher. What happened was when COVID hit 3 years ago, new car sales plummeted, went down to almost zero. So now, 3 years later, we would normally expect to see those cars come off of leases and into the used car inventory, and they're not. And so when there's a shortness in supply, prices go up. When used car prices go up, that makes them very appealing to scammers because now, a car that might have been worth $5,000 with 100,000 miles on it or 150,000 miles on it now is worth maybe $10,000, and that can go considerably higher if you can shave off those extra miles.
Are people doing this individually in their own shops or their own facilities, or do you think people are rolling back odometers at places like automobile auctions where a lot of vehicles move like that?
Yeah, so we see examples, and we certainly read about examples that run from one-off people who are trying to avoid having to pay for extra miles on their lease to organized groups who are, trying to do this at large scale and who will wind up getting charged, by their U.S. attorney in their state. So there's not just one flavor of scammer. They're really all over the board.
I kind of wondered about that because I've owned two different used cars over the course of my driving time, which goes back more years than I'd like to say. And in each instance, I found the registration certificate in the glove box after I bought it. So I had an idea of where it had come from and wondered, frankly, if someone would be doing this or paying someone to do something like that. What do you think?
Well, so that's what's great about something like the vehicle history reports that are available through Carfax for every car is when it goes through a safety inspection, a re-registration, an emissions inspection, we're capturing that information and associating with that vehicle identification number for that vehicle. And you can watch on the vehicle history report as those miles add up over time. And you can see there might be a moment where it was at 80,000 one day and suddenly it's back down to 60,000. And that's a red flag. But so there are three things I think consumers need to be doing when they're thinking about buying a used car. One, if the offer they're making to you seems too good to be true, it absolutely is. Secondly, get that vehicle history report. Or if you want to do a quick check, go to Carfax.com/ODO, plug in the vehicle identification number, and we will tell you instantly and for free whether that car has ever been flagged. Finally, take the car to a mechanic you trust. Get them to put it up on the left. Not only will they be able to see more than you can see, they know what they're looking at. And they can tell if, say, the shocks and struts seem much more worn than the mileage on the odometer suggests.
Yeah, that occurred to me that in a way an odometer rollback is a little bit like a human being going through a facelift. On the surface it looks
Yes.
okay, but underneath inside the body things may not be so great.
That's exactly right. And actually, that's one of the key things is scammers will put new tires on the car, and they will detail it, until it looks like it is just off the showroom floor. And that's how they get you. They'll spend $1,000, but if they get $4,000, $10,000 in extra value on a car, well, then they'll do that all day long.
As far as the regions of the country are concerned, I'm in Connecticut. Can you tell me anything, roughly speaking, about how commonplace this is up here in New England?
Sure. So I can tell you in Connecticut that Carfax estimates that there are 20,000 vehicles that have rollback odometers, including about 14,000 in the Hartford, New Haven corridor there.
Wow, that does surprise me. I would expect some anyway, but that, even for me, that seems like a lot more than you would expect. Do you think this will make that much of a difference as states like Connecticut attempt to move to electric vehicles as opposed to gasoline-powered vehicles? Will that change really make much difference as far as the odometer reading is concerned?
Well, one thing we see both with electric vehicles, but really with all vehicles these days, is the more connected they are, the more places that mileage is being recorded, right? So if you look at new cars where they are having, remote start, and they have, the automakers tracking the fuel economy for you, and they're tracking the mileage, and they're tracking so many different things about your car's performance and saving that in the cloud, it's a lot harder to wipe the tracks clear of that, of the mileage, right? So at the moment, the scammers tend to focus on cars that are, basically 10 years old and older, because those cars, you change the number once in that computer in that car, and no one can tell.
Wow. People have seen advertising, of course, for Carfax for the last few years. Could you repeat that right now if someone wants to jot that right now, or maybe even sitting at their mobile device and can punch that in as we finish our conversation?
Sure. So they, like I said, if they're concerned about it, they can. One, if you're trying to buy a car from someone, ask them to give you the Carfax report. Someone who wants to be transparent about the condition of their car will give you the vehicle history report for free. Secondly, go to Carfax.com/ODO, plug in that vehicle identification number, and we can tell you if it's been flagged. But those are definitely and then again, you got to take the car to a mechanic. It may cost you $100 up front, but it could save you hundreds or thousands of dollars down the road.
Thank you very much. I've been speaking for the past few minutes to Carfax Editor-in-Chief Patrick Olson about the situation with odometer rollback. Thank you, Patrick.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, that was Carfax Editor-in-Chief Patrick Olson. Here is some of what they say about themselves on their website. The Carfax mission. Carfax provides trusted information and helps millions of people shop, buy, service, and sell cars with more confidence. Carfax started with a vision: be the leading source of vehicle history information for buyers and sellers of used cars. Today, we have the most comprehensive vehicle history database available in North America. In fact, hundreds of millions of consumers trust Carfax to provide them with vehicle history information every year. For more information, call us at 860-346-1049. That's 860-346-1049. You can also send email to office@wihsradio.org. The opinions expressed are those of the participants, not necessarily those of the staff or management of this station. I'm Paul Kretschmer for the WIHS Journal, Public Affairs from 104.9 WIHS.